Hello everyone and welcome back to another 2 a.m. review with another episode of Loki. This is episode 2, which just came out super early in the morning. Of course I watched it because I love this show already, 2 episodes in, and I am having an absolute blast with it. And I've said this before in many other reviews, and I'll probably say it in many others. Time travel has a soft spot in my heart. Anything with time travel in it, even Tenet, yes, a movie that some people were back and forth on, I absolutely love because I love the concept and idea of time travel. And this show has been doing it extremely well and in a very interesting way, and it explores time in the ways that I love time to be explored. And so this will be, of course, a spoiler recap and review of this episode of Loki. A lot of great philosophical conversations and things in this episode with Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson absolutely crushing it in their roles once again. And I cannot wait to jump into this. So let's just get right into the episode with it starting off at, I think, Oshkosh, Oklahoma in 1985 at this Renaissance festival. And of course, you have this Loki variant causing some havoc around this area, kidnapping one of the other TVA agents and resetting the timeline with one of those charges that basically prunes the timeline and collects one of those devices along with another one of the little devices that kind of shows what the timeline is, what's happening with the timeline. That little yellow line with the red line at the top, that little device, I don't know if that device has a name, but essentially this Loki variant takes those two things and then dips out of that variant or out of this timeline before the TVA can get there. So this episode starts off right away with the mystery of what is this Loki variant doing? What is this Loki variant's plan? What are they trying to do and why are they taking these things? And of course you have Owen Wilson and the TVA trying to discover what those things are, what those things mean in the grand scheme of this Loki's plan, with of course the help of our Loki variant in this show. And this is where I really love this episode, and the way that this episode really is Tom Hiddleston kind of being introduced into being an actual agent of the TVA. And I really hope that's how this show ends. I really hope this show ends with Loki just being another agent of this TVA and learning how to work better together in an organization that has a greater purpose in terms of the overall scheme of the TVA rather than, the glorious purpose that he seeks for himself. And I just found all the scenes of Tom Hiddleston just sitting at a desk doing his office work or researching in the library, shushing other people in the library, or trying to ring a bell to talk to this one lady at a desk and trying to get, doing his schemes, the things that Loki loves to do of trying to get his fingers in the pot and stirring everything up and trying to figure out what the TVA is, because that's what our Loki variant's goal really is. It becomes fairly obvious in this episode that he really wants to see what this entire place is about, because in the last episode he said this is the most powerful power in the universe, essentially. This is the most powerful place that he can possibly be, and he doesn't care about ruling Midgard anymore or anything like that. That's silly and smaller to him. He's trying to figure out if this entire place is real, and is also struggling with the fact that if there is such thing as a grand ultimate timeline that rules everything and everything has to follow this timeline, does that take away free will? And that's something that Loki cannot wrap his head around, because his entire thing is pulling off schemes and doing things whatever he wants in his way. And that idea of fate and that idea of a true one timeline destiny of his does not gel well with him whatsoever. And in that way, I really, really adore this character because I relate to it so very much. All movies that deal with time travel deal with that idea of destiny and fates versus free will. And that is something that I thought Arrival explored extremely well. That's something that I thought, other time travel movies and shows kind of tried to handle really well. Like, Back to the Future doesn't really have a good time travel thing. Tenet tries to have a whole thing with free will and destiny and all that sort of stuff, but I do think Arrival is the peak of those things. And I think Loki is doing its best at trying to explore this thing, and it all depends on how it ends off, which is going to be my grand idea of this show. But the fact that they're tackling it head on in this episode and having those philosophical questions between Loki and MOBIUS, sitting at a little table in a lunch area, talking and having discussions about it, this show is at least tackling it, so I can give it a lot of points for that. So Loki really wants to see the deal of what the TVA really is, and he wants an audience with the Timekeepers, because I don't think he buys this entire situation quite yet. I don't think he buys it, and I do think that he generally wants to rule and take over the TVA, because he says it to the variant Loki at the end of this episode, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So we are exploring these different things. Loki's doing his research. He's trying to, when they go to the Renaissance Fair and all of that, he's trying to talk his way out of situations. You can see that he is constantly scheming. He's trying to be 10 steps ahead, like he says. But the Mobius character, played by Owen Wilson, is also very smart and is also not one that can be easily tricked by our variant Loki. You can't quite do that so easily with this character, which I really like how smart he is and how much the characters in this TVA really don't trust this variant Loki. They even show him a bunch of different holograms of different Lokis that they have dealt with in the past, all these different schemes that they have, all these different power sets that they have, because they've dealt with this clearly before, just not quite at the level of this, variant Loki that they're hunting down, causing all of these issues. And our Loki actually has a grander purpose in this actual investigation, because he does get one breakthrough with Owen Wilson in this hilarious sequence where he's trying to do a metaphor with his salad and basically explaining that if you have a Ragnarok type situation or an apocalypse level situation, that is set in stone. Like Pompeii, they go to Pompeii in this episode, and that volcano is going to explode, and all those people are going to die, and there's nothing that they can do in that time period before that volcano explodes that's going to change the outcome of the situation. Everybody's still gonna die. He can go free some goats, tell everybody that they're from the future, and say all these crazy, ridiculous things, and then the volcano is still gonna explode, and the TVA will not know that there was a change to the timeline because he didn't affect the timeline because he is in this situation. So he basically found a way that the other Loki is hiding out in the timeline without being seen or without being known by the TVA, which I will get into this other variant Loki in a second here. But I thought this is a great way to deal with time travel in this universe. I love the fact that they can hide out in these different apocalyptic events, which they go to a future apocalyptic event in like the year 2050, and they go to Pompeii and all these different things. They mentioned Ragnarok from Thor Ragnarok and all these Asgardians that die in that situation. You can hide out in that area and not affect anything. And I absolutely love that idea. And I think that they handled the exposition in this show extremely well, because like I said, that entire salad sequence was hysterical. And so Owen Wilson gets an idea out of all these things that he has learned from Loki and all these things that he learned in the previous episode by finding the kablooey candy in the church area. And he basically weeds out the idea that we need to find an apocalyptic event that is, zero casualties and all that sort of stuff, that also has access to kablooey, because this Loki has to be hiding somewhere where those two things are the same. So they go to Alabama in the year 2050, and this is where things get very interesting, because all these little pieces that led them to that point seem very purposeful on the part of this variant Loki, which we find out is a lady version of Loki, Lady Loki, if you will. They can't, or they didn't quite give an actual name for this character quite yet, because she even says when she's, using her enchantment powers to talk through other people that she doesn't like being called Loki, which is a very interesting thing. So we will be able to easily identify Loki, our variant Loki that we follow through the show, with this other variant Loki that is the villain of the show. So next episode will hopefully clear that up, so I have a clear way of calling Loki and Lady Loki two separate things, and maybe that's exactly what it is, but we don't quite know what the deal is with this character. But we do know that all this seems very purposeful. There's no way that this Loki, being as smart as she is, as clever and as genius as this character is, would ever leave that kablooey candy and not have a reason for that. She's planting little seeds so they can follow the little breadcrumbs, so they can follow the trail, so they can get Loki at a certain point, so she can lure him into this, time door. And everything that she does is very, very smart. So I don't quite trust our variant Loki quite yet, because obviously he was willing enough to jump through that doorway because he doesn't quite fit in with the TVA and doesn't quite fit in with the normal timeline. He's a whole new thing, and he's very intrigued and curious by this Lady Loki that he has encountered, and you can tell that he knows to a certain extent of what is going on. He is probably a step or two ahead of us as an audience, but I do like that how this show is leading us on so we can discover things as the show is discovering things on its own. And we also do find out that a little bit of motivation behind this Lady Loki is that she does not want to rule the TVA. What she does with all these little, time bombs, essentially, these things that prune the different timeline areas that all these different branches that are formed, she takes those things, opens time doors with a little wrist screen device and drops them through the time doors and basically bombs the sacred timeline, and all these different branches are breaking out and things are chaos in the TVA and all these things start happening. And this it gets me extremely excited because, for one, the timeline is being destroyed, and that is very, very exciting in a timeline or in a time travel type show that is dealing with a sacred timeline. This kind of leads us into seeing what the true story of this is going to be, and it is extremely intriguing because the time travel aspect, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, is a very unique way of dealing with time, and with all these branches breaking out with the TVA and utter chaos, this is clearly the end of the first act. The inciting incident has happened, the timeline is under attack, and this Lady Loki and our variant Loki are off in some doorway, and Owen Wilson kind of messed up here. So we will have to see what is going on with all that. I didn't talk about a lot of things. I wrote down 2 quotes from the episode that I do want to talk about. One line is, "Existence is chaos, nothing makes any sense, so we try to make sense of it ourselves." I love that line of just trying to rationalize what the whole world is, how everybody has their origins, where they are from, and it just doesn't really make sense. If they all sound ridiculous if you say it out loud in this world, and it does kind of put the question mark on whether or not these timekeepers are even a thing, or if this, sacred timeline, this whole TVA situation is outside of that timeline, or if it's even a part of it, and it's all part of the grand game, this giant game of chess that the timekeepers are playing. And Loki also does say that no one bad is ever truly bad, and no one good is ever truly good. And I love that philosophy because we have this variant Loki that we're following that could be good, that could be bad, we don't quite know, and then we still don't know the motivations of Lady Loki quite yet, which I'm very, very intrigued to see what those motivations are to bombing the sacred timeline. So I am very, very, very excited to get into new ground where critics have not seen any episodes in episode 3, 4, 5, and 6. Come back every single week, guys. I will have 3 AM reviews out for you guys because I love doing these videos. I love watching this show, and I love talking to you guys about all these nerdy things. And I will have also movie reviews coming out every week. I will be watching Fast 9, which that series is something else, so I cannot wait to talk about that movie as well as everything else here on the channel. So thanks guys for watching this video, and I hope to see you all in my next one.